I mean, I kinda get that the following statement might not sound like it makes all that much sense, but hear me out first. I think that the Ultrasone Signature Pro, just because of the title Pro in the name already, is actually not doing all that amazingly well what it's intended to do. But the thing that it's not specifically made for is where it shines, in my opinion, and where it does an extraordinary job. And what it is and what I mean by that, I'll tell you later on. But for now, let's check what's in this nice little travel case. And as you can see, it's quite thin, therefore a little bit tall. And inside we can see here, first of all, the 1.5 meter long cable that has 90-degree angled 3.5 millimeter jack, and on the other end the 2.5 millimeter jack that has this twist and lock that I will show you later on. Of course, here we have the headphones that can be rotated and therefore stored quite easily, and here we have the 3 meter long cable that has the 1/4 inch adapter or 6.35 millimeters, and that's pretty much already it. I know you can't see it all that well because of the poor lighting, but that's it. Like I said, the cable here, it can be just plugged in, and then you twist it and it's locked and it won't go anywhere. The cable on its own, I have to say, feels of good quality. It doesn't maybe feel high quality or super premium, but I don't see this to be an issue at all, especially since it's quite thick and still very flexible. So I'm all good with that. And let's get to the most important part, obviously, the headphones themselves. Now, in terms of design, what I first of all noticed is that they feel and look very rugged, and they are definitely made to last because everything feels quite thick. All the plastic that they used feels like high quality plastic. The headband seems very robust, and everything else feels absolutely solid, very sturdy. And we also can fold it up, as you can see here, to store it a little bit smaller. I'm not quite sure if this had to be kind of this thick, but it is what it is. We also have different kind of steps, not with numbers, but definitely it stays that way. You can quite easily correct it, but once on your head, this is absolutely safe. Now the headband, I have to say, is kinda one of my little gripes, because it seems so thick, but it actually doesn't have pretty much any sort of padding. And to me, it actually feels like there is a wood inside that is kind of spring-loaded and kind of pushes outwards all the time, which is weird. So it definitely feels quite hard, and I'll talk about that a little bit more in the comfort part. Other than that, we definitely have enough wiggle room to put it properly on your head. And let's talk about the ear cups. I personally would wish for them to be about a centimeter longer, because even though my ears fit in completely, I always had this slight little feeling of something touching. The next good thing is also that it's thick enough, and my ears definitely did not touch inside anywhere. In the width it was also fine. One quite outstanding thing is that they use long hair sheep skin leather. And that is supposed to be just not aging. So the way it is now in terms of softness, it should stay forever. And that might be because it actually uses or looks quite used up. But this is maybe a good thing or a bad thing. Of course, you could also replace them, which is something that I would maybe even, as weird as it sounds for such a high quality ear pad, to maybe be the better choice. Because once I put them on, let's talk about the good things. The fit is amazing. Just already known from the Ultrasone Performance 880 that I had, they sit super correct. They don't move at all, they sit just right. They have a little bit more clamping force, but the issue for me is that just because of the padding of the ear pads itself, it is a little bit uncomfortable because it doesn't feel really soft. Because if I have the leather just in my hand and push on, it feels fine. But once I have them on, it feels like nothing of this softness is actually touching my ears or everything around it, which is just a little bit odd. And like I said, there is no padding on the headband, which is usually not an issue, because I've used already so many headphones that pretty much have no padding and it didn't bother. But for some reason, this construction, at least if you have them maybe a little bit tighter on your head, it is noticeable. So maybe have it a little bit more loose, because just because of the clamping force on its own, it will stay secure. But I have to say that the comfort was something that I had to get used to actually quite a while. After 3 weeks, I was fine with it, but every time I take them off, I notice a relief. And due to being, of course, leather and quite a tight seal, your ears will get warm, and it's not the most comfortable for a longer period of time, which is a little bit odd since, like I said, they are made for pros in the recording studio, and I'm not quite sure if that properly fits, at least in terms of comfort standpoint. Now, about isolation, I have to say this one is actually really good, because you have this good seal, and since everything is tight, the isolation is really good, and since they are closed, the leakage is also fine. But now I want to get into the sound, and here I just want to read something that they say in their own pamphlet, and I will just point out one little part. They say the Signature Pro was developed for professional use in recording studios. Thanks to the 40mm titanium-coated sound transducers, they reproduce sound with a unique musical precision. S-Logic Plus means a broad stereo panorama with excellent depth graduation. And I pretty much agree on everything they say besides the recording studio part, because in my opinion this headphone is just too much fun for a recording studio, which is weird, because just to roughly explain the sound signature, it is quite warm, just a tad little bit on the darker side, but overall mostly warm, with an amazing bass, even though it doesn't extend maybe all that far, and with a nice peak at around 9 to 11 Ks, which gives it the sparkle and the highs. And I think just because it's not neutral enough, I'm not quite so sure if this is properly done for mixing. Because of course, I don't mix music and I don't work in a recording studio, so I can't properly judge that as I should. But I would assume that a studio monitor or recorder, or a headphone I mean, should have to be at least uncolored, which it is, but also neutral. And this is just not what I'm seeing here, because we definitely have noticeably elevated bass. Not quite so much at the beginning, but closer towards the mids it gets elevated, and this stays like it until the mids are over, like the upper mids arrive. Then we have a little bit of a dip, and then the great thing comes, the peak in the treble at around 9 to 11, where it's mostly important. At around 10K we have this top-notch highs. These trebles are what make this headphone shine, even though for some reason at first it could have been different, because I've used these for over a week, and for some reason I wasn't quite impressed first, because maybe I was surrounded by a lot of other way more neutral headphones, like for example the Shure 1840 that I had, and also the Monolith M1060 and the Beyerdynamic 19 Pro, and that's why they felt way too fun sounded, and I still think they are, and that's why I don't think they are made for a recording studio. But if you want, even though that might be the wrong kind of use case scenario, an amazingly done, fun sounded headphone that still is very precise and kind of accurate, this is absolutely amazing. And this is, I would actually say, the best fun sounded headphone, or the most high quality or most high end fun sounded headphone that I've used so far, because the bass, like I said, doesn't maybe extend all that deep, and it's definitely in its best kind of prime where it's around the kick bass, but super nice, punchy, tight bass, actually a little bit almost dry, but very warm. Absolutely top. It works amazingly well for everything, absolutely, because it is an absolutely top-notch all-rounder, and that is actually something that I did not expect it to be, because I could listen with this with dubstep. Okay, maybe I didn't get quite the oomph like I would get from an LCD-X from Odyssey, but it is a super top-notch bass, even though it just, like I said, it doesn't extend too much. The mids also, they are absolutely on one line with the instruments, and one thing that doesn't maybe happen is that the artist or the vocals stand out. They are kind of, everything is one. There is not a separation between so much, because even though they say, like what they say is excellent depth graduation, this is there. In the instruments you can hear everything clearly separated and all that, but where it comes to the vocals, I think it's a very harmonic, balanced sounds, and they kind of don't prefer the vocals and neither put more emphasis on the instruments, and that definitely would make sense for a recording headphone, absolutely. But for me, what makes this so much fun is that the vocals are absolutely where they should be still, and I enjoy them with the amazing bass, and all that alone could already be, like I said, a little bit on darker, but never fixed side. But the one thing that kind of makes this, or kind of puts the little bit cherry on top, is the peak in the highs, because this just makes high sparkle. And since we have this quite long or quite wide peak at around 10K, that is definitely noticeable, because we have some very high, detailed, precise highs that stay away though from ever being sharp. And that's why I could listen to these for hours and hours, and at no point I felt fatigued. Now, one thing that Ultrasone always claims is that you can listen to music very well already on lower volumes. personally, I think it's actually the opposite, because with these, or with also my Performance 880, I always want to, as loud as possible, to kind of get the most surrounding feeling and the best kind of experience. But the good thing is I can listen with these very, very loud for hours and hours, which is usually a thing that can be fatiguing, especially with kind of nicely focused highs like these. But it is not the case, because they are, even though they don't roll off too smooth or anything, and like I said, they don't go too sharp, nowhere, at no point, they manage to give you the sparkle. And I've noticed that I could listen to even like kind of my lower quality music, where I had a little bit of an issue with the LCD-X, where they felt dull. Not here the case. So nicely balanced. The soundstage should be quite wide, and for on closed back it definitely is, I would say, but it's not like super wide. There are still open ones that are definitely wider, but I would say it is above average for on closed back. And like I said, I really like it because maybe not quite its main purpose is that it sounds so much like fun. Now, what I've noticed that it maybe doesn't do so much, but I had to say, like one or two maybe headphones that I've had here in for review managed to do that. It didn't have this amazingly impressive thing, because there is a certain track, I can't remember the name because it's a Russian title. When I heard this the first time, and that's one song that I always listen to on the LCD-X for the first time, I kind of got goosebumps. So this is pure fun, a lot of it, almost too much, especially for a recording studio, but it's not an impressive one. But like I said, nothing else that I've had here. Maybe something like the M1060 modded would get close to that, but no. This is pure fun. I don't see this to be in the recording studio, because I think I can tell you so much. The person who mixes with these definitely has a hell of a time with them. But I also think that if he would mix up with these and someone would listen to that music with something very neutral, it would kind of lack bass, because we have this elevated bass here in the little bit mids. So maybe if you are a mixer, or if you do some mixing in your recording studio or on your own as your hobby, maybe you can tell me if I'm wrong here, because maybe I judged this completely wrong. I don't know. And by the way, you can hear a little bit of a twist and tweak due to the hinges and such, but it feels super sturdy, so don't worry about that. But overall, yes, let's now first of all actually call it out. The price, around 800 euros, I would say it's roughly 730 euros, I guess roughly $800. Ultrasone is not that much of a popular brand in the US, or maybe outside of Germany, but it is expensive. But like I said, if you want fun, but a high quality fun, where everything is on a top-notch level, because like I said, the bass, I really think Ultrasone has figured out the bass, especially on a closed headphone. It is such a nice, tight, warm, overall great feeling bass, but it never feels dull, it never feels warm, it never feels thick or kinda dull, especially with the amazing highs. Of course, the mids, at some point, if you push both ends, you kind of have to put one a little bit on the lower end of the importance factor, but even the mids are absolutely fitting nicely. The balance here is absolutely top, and like I said, it's not cheap, but if you want to have a lot of fun, and I think this is the time, once I got used to that specific feeling, not being already neutral, I had so much fun as I didn't have a long time before. This is a different kind of listening experience. That's the important factor, because I can enjoy, of course, something very neutral as well. But this is definitely something that from time to time you pick that one up and you just have a great time. That's where I'm gonna leave it. Before I'm actually finishing that though, something that I always forget is how easy it is to power. But I think it's kind of obvious you won't power this with a smartphone or something like that, even though with a halfway decent sound card it's possible. But at this price point you should just use one or headphone amp. And I actually think, even though I can't properly judge that, the better the amp is, or the more ampage it gets, a little bit more power behind it, I think the more it would actually help in terms of even providing a wider sound stage, getting things even more so controlled and giving it a more mature feel. At least that's what I think, because the more power I give it, especially on high gain mode and such, it feels like it comes even more so alive than it already is. And this alive feeling is something that translates over to you, and it's just so much fun. That's the main thing. If recording studios is what they intended to do here with this one, that's something I don't know. But otherwise, that's it. No. Okay, until next time. Bye.